Everyone. My name is Dr. Patricia Lally, and I'm the program director for the Master of Science in Sport and Performance Psychology at Commonwealth University. And the focus of today's information session is to talk specifically about becoming a certified mental performance consultant through AASP. And I did put some slides together, so bear with me as I share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to go through some kind of main questions with regards to certification, and then I'm going to be sure to leave time for questions as well. And Thomas, as our graduate admissions staff, will direct some of those questions that you put in the chat. And again, I know that some of you are in class, so if there are questions that we don't get answered today, you can always feel free to email me afterwards. Okay, so one of the first things that I wanted to talk about with regards to certification, let me move this out of the way, is why would you want to get certified? So certification, and I'm going to refer to it as CMPC, is not required to work as a sports psychology or sport and performance psychology consultant. The requirement is that you have a minimum of a master's degree in the area. So it is considered a professional discipline. Certification is not required yet. I do think we're going to meet a time in the not too distant future where it is required, but it's not required to be certified like it is, for example, in athletic training. So why would you want to become certified? And I'm going to talk about how you do it, but first important to talk about why. And the reason that I think it is important to do it is to demonstrate to consumers that you have reached the criteria in terms of your training and your professional education to actually work in a capacity as a sport and performance psychology consultant. I think it will indicate to people that you want to work with, that you've been vetted by the professional discipline, and that you're ready to work in that capacity. You're going to see what is required. So there is some legwork required to do it, but I do think there's a lot of benefits to being certified. I think one of the other things that we're seeing more and more is that as the certification becomes more well known, you're seeing it be required for certain jobs. So they're going to want to see that you have both the education and that you have the certification. So although not required, you are going to see it being necessary for jobs, and you're also going to be competing against others for those positions who are certified. So if you go on the AASP website, they list some additional benefits, but I think that those are the two primary benefits in terms of becoming certified. Okay, so how do you actually become certified? I'm going to move this again, and maybe I'll just leave it here. Hopefully that doesn't conflict with other content. All right, so there's actually 4 criteria to become certified. The first is a minimum of a master's degree in sports science or psychology. There are some degrees in sports science that they're not going to accept. So for example, I've heard from others that the AASP Certification Council, who is the one that provides the certification and reviews your application, won't accept, for example, a sport management degree. So they're looking for a degree that's in sports science or psychology, and we're going to see the course content in specific areas. So the course content, number 2 listed there, they've identified K1 through K8, and I have that listed on a table on a subsequent slide. So not only do you need the degree, but you need to make sure that you're taking coursework in specific areas. If that coursework doesn't come as part of your degree, then you can take the courses outside of your degree. And so, for example, we do have a number of students every semester who have an existing degree, not from us, and they want to get certified. And so they're coming back to our program, for example, to take a class or 2 that they might have been missing. In addition to the degree and the specific coursework, the next major criteria is a 400-hour supervised mentorship. And again, I'll talk today about what that looks like, what that includes. Once you've completed all 3 of those criteria, you can then apply to AASP. So remember that this is a certification provided by an outside body, the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, which everyone calls AASP. It's not provided by the university. We do help you prepare for it, but it's something that is administered and overseen and awarded by an outside body. Once you have completed the first 3 criteria listed here, you can apply to them. Once they review your material, they'll indicate whether or not you're ready to sit for the certification exam. And then you have to pass the certification exam. So that's the initial phase to get certified. You do have to get recertified. And I'm assuming, though, most of you in the meeting today haven't been certified, and those are your primary questions. So you can read more about the recertification on the AASP website. All right, so what are those K1 through K8 areas? And so you see them listed here. And let me see, I'm going to move my recording screen. Okay, so let's talk about what these areas involve. What you're going to see on the left-hand column of the table are AASP's requirements. You'll notice that some of them are designated with an asterisk. That means that in those categories, they will accept only graduate level coursework. So you'll notice that there are some categories where they'll accept an undergraduate course, which is fantastic. There is a grade requirement, so you have to have a C or better in those courses. And right now there's no timeline. So for example, for us to accept transfer credits into our program from another grad program, they have to be 6 years or younger. AASP doesn't have a timeline criteria, so you can have older courses satisfy these requirements. All right, and then on the right-hand column, you see the courses that we have in our program. And if you're reading on the AASP website, you're going to see that they recently introduced a program accreditation process. And when I say recently, I mean in the last, well, it's probably a month now. But very recently. So there are no programs that are accredited yet. Accreditation is not required. We will have to wait and see. And then when I say we, program directors, we'll have to see how many programs actually pursue accreditation. But because they have now accreditation, they used to approve courses and will no longer do that because now they're approving programs. So at one time, you could go on the AASP website, and under the certification tab, you could look to see what courses outside of AASP they had approved. And so at one time, we put our courses through for approval and were listed on that table. They've since taken that table down because they're now doing the accreditation. And so what they have said, and so what the Certification Council has said in the most recent, they have an all program directors group. And so in our most recent meeting, maybe 10 days ago, what they've said is they will continue to accept courses that have historically been accepted. So what you see here is our best estimate based on past practice of what the Certification Council will accept in terms of coursework from our program to satisfy their K1 through K8 requirements. So again, I want to say this is our best estimate. We can't guarantee. The Certification Council is the one that actually makes the decision. But given what they've said most recently, these courses have been historically accepted and should be going forward. All right, so in K1, we have our Professional Ethics and Applied Sports Psychology course, so 516. You'll see in K2, and K1 and K2 are those courses have to be graduate level. In K2, one of the changes they made recently is that instead of having just one course requirement, you have to have a course, you have to actually have 3 courses, and each of them have to touch on a slightly different area. And so our courses do satisfy that. So there's a foundations course, a performance enhancement course, the 512 course, which is primarily a techniques course. So it's our most applied of the courses. And then 513, which the psychological aspects of injury and recovery. We do have another course, the stress management course, which we haven't offered in a couple of years, primarily because we're offering other courses to satisfy the certification requirements. In the sports science, so K3, we offer gender and sports class. That's typically offered in the summer. It's an elective. This is, if you notice, no asterisk. So it's one place that students can use undergraduate courses. And what we typically see here are courses in kinesiology, motor learning. There may be like a sports sociology course at the undergraduate level. So as long as it is a sports science related course, exercise physiology, for example, that should satisfy K3. K4, again, notice that there's no asterisk, so they accept an undergraduate course. The most common undergraduate course we see here is abnormal psychology. So for K3, if you're coming in from a kinesiology, sports science undergrad, you may already have courses that you've taken that satisfy that. And in K4, if you're coming in with a psych undergrad, then you may also have courses there that would satisfy that. Remember that if you're using an undergraduate course, it has to be upper level, and that typically means a 300 or 400 level course. Although by strange university practices, the university can actually designate what is upper level, and that may not be a hard and fast rule that if it's 300 level or 400, it's considered upper level. So that's something you'd have to make sure from your registrar's office. But in K4, the course that we offer that we expect would satisfy is the mental health and sport and performance settings. That is typically offered in the fall and spring, and that is a required course in our program. K5, helping relations, relationships has to be a graduate level course. These are typically your counseling techniques courses. And we see that being applicable to anyone who's coming in already with a counseling degree. You probably have a counseling skills course that would apply. And if not, we do have the counseling skills course as an elective, typically offered in the summer. K6 is a research methods course, graduate level only. We offer the research methods course, and we have it offered in the fall and in the spring, and that's a required course for our program. K7 is the other area where you can use undergraduate level courses. And this is basically the pure psychology course within the K1 through K8 requirement. So you're typically, if you have an undergrad in psychology and you have upper level psychology courses, there's probably a course in there that would count. The courses that we offer that we expect to count, again, based on historical past practice of acceptance by the association's certification council, is 504, which is an elective in our program. And depending on the topic, 515. So 515 is a seminar course. The topic changes each time that it's offered, depending on who's teaching it. So you really want to be sure that you're asking the course instructor if they think the topic would satisfy. And then the diversity and culture, which is K8, we have 517, which is an elective course typically offered in the spring. Although I have requested it to be offered this summer because we do have a lot of students who wanted to take it in the spring and couldn't get into the course. So that's a general overview of all the courses that we offer and where we anticipate they would be accepted for AASP. All right, so let's talk about this 400-hour supervised mentorship. So this is that third main criteria, and you're going to see on the next slide where all those hours fall. And if there's questions, I may pull up the candidate handbook. So if you haven't already, on the AASP website, they have on the right-hand navigation a tab for certification. And in there, they have all sorts of resources, including their candidate handbook, which I think is almost 70 pages. And it describes exactly where these hours need to be. So I'm going to give you a quick overview, and then if we have questions in the Q&A section, we can pull up that handbook and see more detailed responses. All right, so looking at the top, so it's 400 hours. Those are broken down into two areas, time spent by the mentee and time spent by the mentor. So let's go down and look at the time spent by the mentee. A minimum of 350 hours. So in each of these cases, you're going to see a minimum, unless the two places where there's not a minimum. But that doesn't mean that you can't do more. It just means that you have to meet a minimum in each of these areas. So in this first time spent by me, these 350 hours, 150 can be support activities. This includes maybe you're going to work with a team that you've never worked with before, and so you're going to go out and observe practice just to get a sense of how practice is run, and so that would count in those support activities. Let's say that you've been invited to give a workshop on interpersonal communication on the team, and so you would like to learn more about interpersonal communication specifically, and you're going to do a little bit of research. And you're going to look at different workshops that have been done. That would count in those support activities. Let's say that you're working with a sport that you've never participated in, you don't know anything about, and you want to go and learn more about it. And so you're going to go watch a game, you're going to watch some video, you might read some material about it. That would go in those supporting activities. So in the supporting activities, you can count a lot of different types of activities. All right, let's look at this other side, the direct client contact. The direct client contact is the time you're actually working with your client populations. And your client populations, again, AASP is really clear on what counts as a client population and what doesn't. And what work counts and what doesn't. I'm going to give you some examples, but again, would direct you to that handbook that has a really detailed description. So your direct client contact is all the time that you're going to spend primarily with athletes, either in a one-on-one environment or a team environment where you're doing hands-on work with them. So you're meeting one-on-one with an athlete, and you're going to work on goal setting with them. That counts in direct client contact. You're going to go in and provide a workshop to a team on, I don't know, anxiety management. So that counts as direct client contact. If you're going in to meet with a coach and you're going to try to have the coach hire you and work with their team, that is direct client contact, explaining what your philosophy is, what your work is, what sports psychology is about. That's considered direct client contact. A lot of the work that the students in our program do is specifically with athlete populations, but AASP does allow you to work with other populations as well. So you may have other performers. So I've worked with students who are really interested in dance and ballet, and so they're working with a dance population. That counts. You may be doing work with an injured athlete population. That would count. Let's say that you're going to do work with military personnel. So we have a number of students who are interested in working in a sports psychology capacity with military personnel. That would count as well. You may go in and do work in a wellness fitness environment. That would count as long as it's sports psychology related. So let's say, for example, we do have some students who are certified athletic trainers or they're certified in strength and conditioning, but you also want to do some sports psychology work. If you are working with them specifically in your athletic training role, that does not count. If you're going to work with them specifically in your strength and conditioning, providing strength and conditioning training programs and observing them in the weight room and stuff, that does not count. There are going to be times when you may have both roles and what you're doing specifically, even with the same client, differs. So let's say, again, you have an athletic trainer who's also doing sports psychology. Let's say in those moments that they're treating the athlete, that would count as athletic training, but they're also talking to the athlete about, the psychology side of being injured and how to manage that. That would count as sports psychology. Okay, so let's talk about the sport context. A minimum of those direct client contact hours have to be in sport. But again, the fact that it's minimum means that you can be doing work in other settings. So you can be doing work in a non-sport context as well. You notice there's no minimum because there is a minimum here. All right, let's talk about the other side of this chart, which is the time spent with a mentor. So you have to be supervised by an AASP-approved mentor. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about how to find one. But that means that the AASP-approved mentor is an AASP member. They are certified, and then they've gone through additional training to become a mentor. And we'll talk about where to find them. They have to do 50 hours of work with the mentee. And that is divided in two areas. So let's talk about this area first. So 40 hours of mentorship, and that can be divided into individual one-on-one mentorship and then group mentorship. How that works in our program, and I'll give you an example. I don't actually have anyone doing a mentorship this semester, but last semester, I think we had 3 students doing a supervised mentorship with me. We have a course for that, SPPP 531. And we met every week as a group. So we met by Zoom. We tried to find a regular time, although that changed depending on the requirements that they had on their plates and stuff. And then I met with them one-on-one during the week as well. So you'll see again, it's a minimum of 40 hours. 20 of those have to be one-on-one. There's no minimum for the group, but there's a minimum here, so we know that the group can't be more than 20. The individual mentorship can include Zoom time, phone calls, emails. I don't really text with anyone unless it's like, oh, we have to change the time. And so the format of that individual mentorship can be both face-to-face or what approximates face-to-face, like FaceTime or Zoom, or it can also be electronic. All right, let's talk about this last little piece here. That's the direct knowledge of services. This is critical, and this is where your mentor actually sees the work that you're doing. Now, a lot of times that's taking place remotely, so we don't actually have anyone in our program who's doing this in a place where I'm going to see them. Ours is a fully online program. And so typically what this involves is sending recordings of the work that they're doing, and then I watch the recording. It's cringy, and I confess ahead of time, I know it is, but typically what I do is I have the students send me a recording in Zoom, and then I watch it in Zoom, and I'll pause and be like, okay, this was really good. Ooh, take this into account here. Pay attention to this here. And then I send them back the Zoom recording, and they have to watch themselves while I'm watching them. But that's our way to provide them direct knowledge of services, feedback on exactly what they're doing, how well they're doing, where they need to make changes, and continue that growth. This is considered kind of an early career process, although not always. All right, so let's talk about your mentor. So I put a link in here for those of you who want to see. There is on the AASP website a directory of approved mentors. You can search by sport, you can search by geography. The reason I'm including this is not that many students actually do the supervised mentorship as part of our program. And the reason for that is they need the courses that we provide, those elective courses that I talked about in that table earlier. They need those courses to satisfy the K1 through K8 requirements. And they don't have room as part of the program to take the course I mentioned, that 531, the supervised mentorship, as part of our program. So this semester, for example, I have 0. Last semester, I had 3. Typically, the students who do have elective space in their program are students who have an undergrad degree in kinesiology sports science. So they're already satisfying one of those K1 through K8 categories, or who have an undergrad degree in psychology and can satisfy one of the requirements, or someone who already has an existing master's degree and they're already knocking out probably 2 or 3 of those requirements with a master's degree already. And so for the vast majority of students, they are pursuing their certified, their 400-hour supervised mentorship outside of the program, and they need to find a mentor. And so if you go to this listing, you can search for someone in your area, you can search for someone geographically, or someone who does specific sport that they're interested in. AASP does allow someone who is not an AASP certified person or an AASP approved mentor to supervise a mentee one time. And it could be one time for the whole 400 hours. I don't mean just one time for a few hours. There is an application process that has to be approved firsthand. So you may know someone who is willing to supervise your work. They would just have to get approved first. After that one time, AASP will say, well, no, now you have to become an AASP member, get certified yourself, and become a mentor. I do want to share with people to be prepared, and I think sometimes students are surprised by this, that there is a fee for the mentorship. So I'm going to go back up just for a second. So you notice it's 400 hours. You shouldn't have someone who's going to charge you a mentorship fee for all 400 hours. What you'll have is someone who's going to charge you a mentorship fee for the 50 hours. And that's because they're probably a sports psychology consultant working with athletes and coaches and performers in other settings. And instead of working with their other clients, they're working with you. And so they're going to charge you typically what they would charge a client. And oftentimes they'll prorate that so it's much less. And in some cases, you may also find someone who doesn't charge. They're just kind of giving back to the sports psychology community. But don't be surprised by that. It's totally normal, and you see it in other disciplines. All right. One of the other questions that I get is, when should I start? This will vary by mentor. Some mentors will work with you earlier and some later. AASP does provide a recommendation, and their recommendation is that the person who is pursuing those hours has courses completed in certain areas. So they have a theoretical foundations course complete. For us, that would be the 510 course. They have an ethics course complete. And again, for us, that would be 516. They have a counseling skills course. For us, that's 518. And then they have a techniques or skills specifically with sports psychology training. And for us, that's 512. In our program, we consider the 400-hour supervised mentorship a culminating experience. So an experience that you would complete near the end of your studies. So that would, to me, that is your last semester. So sometimes I have students, they start the program, they want to start getting hours right away. And I'm like, no, you can't. And that makes sense. They really need the courses and the content of those courses that we're providing to be prepared to start going out and doing work with athletes. And I think sometimes they're taken a little bit aback that they thought they could get their hours started right away, and that's not necessarily the case. All right, I think I did put up information about the application process for anyone who's interested in doing that. But if you do have questions about that, Thomas is here and can answer some of those. If not, I'm going to put up my contact information really quickly. And then I'm going to stop sharing and see if people have any questions. And I'll see, I'm going to ask Thomas to jump back on. All right, and I only see one in the chat, Thomas, so.
Yeah, Dr. Lally, I think your presentation was certainly very comprehensive and probably answered a lot of questions that may have existed. There is a good one here, though. The CMPC application indicates 3 courses for the K2 area, but you have listed 4. Is there a reason for the difference?
Yeah, so those 4 are, if you look at the top, these are courses that we offer that would satisfy the category. So we're not saying you have to take all 4 of those. Those are the 4 courses that we offer. So yeah, so it's not a difference. It's just we offer more than what they're requiring. I would say though that last class that I have listed, that 514, we don't offer that very often and haven't in a couple of years, just because we're offering the courses in the other areas. Yeah,
that's a great question. If a student is a professional athlete and have mental performance experience, do I still need to wait till I have classes to start getting hours? It's a great question.
Yes, it is a great question. Hi, Mary. Yes, so this is going to vary by mentor. So the mentor is really the mentor is the one who's going to oversee your work and sign off on that work. So you may find a mentor who says, oh, no, like absolutely, you have enough qualifications to be able to start your hours, and I'm comfortable with you doing that. If I have a student who wants to do that, I follow the AASP recommendations, and that is they still need to have coursework. And from my perspective, just because you're an athlete doesn't mean that you necessarily understand all the theoretical foundations. It doesn't mean that you understand the ethics of working in sports psychology. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have counseling skills to be able to work one-on-one. You've definitely got good communication skills and understanding of how team dynamics work if you're a professional athlete and been working in a sports setting for a long time, but you may not have the specific counseling skills. The students if there are any here who have taken the counseling skills course, or you've had to do any partner work where you're recording yourself role playing as a sports psychology consultant, you can attest to how scary that is the first time. So I don't think that necessarily being an athlete translates specifically to being qualified to work as a sports psychology consultant. So I would want to see coursework completed. If you wanted to do our course 531, again, you don't have to do it as part of our program. You can do it outside of the program.
Great, thank you. Dr. Lally, do you have any recommendations for schools in Pennsylvania that offer undergraduate courses? It looks like I will need to fill about 7 courses. Curious if it matters where I take them in order, where I take them in order not to have to complete the program at Lock Haven.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am cognizant of cost, so I would say if you're in state, go somewhere where you can get in-state fees. I would have to ask about the 7 courses because I don't think there's 7 areas that will accept the undergraduate courses. So I don't know that you would have 7 undergraduate courses to complete. I'm going to say that where they have undergraduate courses, I'm pulling up my list. Where they have undergraduate courses are going to be abnormal psychology. That's gonna be across the board, probably standard. And then in that sports science area, so if it's a motor learning ex-phys class, that's probably going to be standard across the board as well.
Let's see, are there any other costs associated with obtaining and maintaining the certification?
Oh, yes, attaining. Yeah, you have to apply. And I'm going to say, I didn't look this up. I think it's $375 to apply. But I'm going to direct you to the AASP website for that. So I don't want to quote them. Remember, this is a certification provided by an outside agency. So you do have to apply. I think it's $375 to sit for the certification exam. You do have to be a continuing member. So that means you have member fees every year. And then if you want to become recertified, which is every 5 years, there's going to be an application fee at that time as well. So yes.
For time spent with the Army, that counted as the direct context, sports context, or the non-sport context, we have R2 centered that are more performance focused, and that may be an option for some of my hours.
Yes. So yes, it doesn't have to be a sport population. It can be another population. And I don't want to say the population. Well, I don't want to say the population doesn't matter. The population definitely matters. So it's both a population and the work applied. So if you were doing work with an athlete population, but that wasn't sports psychology, then it doesn't matter that it's an athlete population. If you were doing work with military personnel and it was sports psychology related, then that would count. I would say to think about the work has to be supervised by someone at that time. Now, again, you might find a mentor who says, okay, you were doing this work. Maybe I would accept it, but they're supposed to be supervising your work as it takes place. So like, I would not accept work, even if you could document that you did it, I would not accept it in that I had nothing to do with it. I didn't know what you were doing. I wasn't providing feedback. We weren't talking about the work that you were doing ahead of time before the meeting that you had with the population or client, and then debriefing about it afterwards. So I don't think mentors are going back to historic hours, if that makes sense.
What is the most common professional work most postgraduate students pursue as they are completing the mentorship component for the CMPC certification? That's a very good question.
Yeah, I think it really depends. So again, the certification is not pursued by all the students in our program. So we have in our program athletic trainers. They're already certified, so they don't necessarily want to get certified. They want the education from our grad degree. We have people in our program who are health and phys ed teachers. They're already certified in 2 areas, so they are not looking to get certified. So only a small portion of those in our program actually pursue certification, and those are the students who want to go and work in sport and performance psychology. So the work that they're doing is really using that training to specifically work in that role. And what they do varies. Some will go and start a private practice. So they want to work with athletes and coaches and build their own business. Some will try to work in that capacity at the college level, professional level. Some will go on and pursue a PhD so that they can have a PhD and be able to secure those positions and maybe teach at the university level. Some will go into college athletics and work not specifically in terms of mental skills training, but they'll work in athlete wellness, athlete fitness, or academic advising. So they're going to work in a college setting, but maybe that path in a college setting will vary.
Great. Are there any online options you recommend for someone who only needs to complete a few courses? Do you recommend the CMPC K1 course for ethics?
Yes. Yeah, that's why, I mean, that course has historically been approved for the ethics area, and we assume that it's going to going forward based on the meeting we had. So in the AASP professional discipline, there is an all program directors group, and I'm part of that. And we had a meeting about 10 days ago, and there were a lot of questions about certification and the impact of accreditation, because they used to list all the courses that they'd historically approved. They've taken that table down because the accrediting body said that's too confusing. It looks like you've accredited those programs where those courses are housed, but you haven't. But they're still going to continue to accept those. So yes, I would expect that SPPP 516 would count for K1. ASP also provides an ethics course. And so they do provide courses of their own in 2 areas. So they do for K1, the ethics area, and then for K8, that cultural diversity area.
We have a student here who started taking her hours after taking the ethics and counseling class. Her mentor thought it was okay for them to start because of my background in my work with others on mindset and mental performance. Could the AASP reject all the hours I've accumulated because I have not completed my master's?
No. So they're going to rely on your mentor, and that's why I said, like, it will vary by mentor. So part of me wanting students to have the coursework is ASP's recommendation. The other part is that I know our program really well, and I know what courses, what information the courses are providing. So I know if the student hasn't taken the course, they don't have that information. But your mentor, if you find someone else, they might be fine with that, because they're going to provide that education to you as part of the mentorship. I simply don't have the time to teach individual courses one-on-one to a mentee while I'm also teaching the classes. So your mentor, if they've signed off on the hours and they're an ASP approved mentor, ASP is going to accept that. I'm assuming. I mean, I can't speak for ASP, it's an outside agency, but yeah, I mean, they should accept the hours if your ASP approved mentor has signed off on them.
Yeah, and I would say probably for any student who has any specific or questions specific to the situation, as opposed to some of the ones that may be more general, Dr. Lally, is it okay if they follow up with you via email for some more specific consultation or advice?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you have specific scenarios, I will say probably, and I'm going to provide you with my best educated response. But again, this is a certification provided by the outside agency, and you may want to contact them directly. But I would say that there is a 70-page handbook for candidates, and I could pull it up if we want to look at it, and it's got a really good table of contents listing where all the information is. So they have a ton of information on their website about certification, and they also have some videos that they've put out. So there's an ASP YouTube channel, and they have resources and tools there as well. So I would say don't ask a question that's going to be answered there, because they're super busy. The Certification Council, they do all of this work on a volunteer basis. And you may have a question that's not answered in the material, but you've kind of wasted your time with them by asking questions that you could have answered on your own. Because at some point they will say, just submit your application and we're going to review it. They actually have said in their most recent meeting, they don't have the time to preview people's applications anymore. So they're telling people just apply, and if there's a problem, we'll tell you what the problem is.
Good kind of bottom line question here, Dr. Lally. We have a student here who's considering multiple programs.
Yeah.
Why should they choose Commonwealth program for CMPC certification?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't want to say choose ours. I would say choose one that's a really good fit for you. So we designed our program to be a good fit for students in terms of providing online courses, in terms of providing the flexibility start summer, fall, spring. We provide flexibility in terms of being able to attend part-time, and those credits change. So we have some teachers who will pick up a winter class because they're on break. They'll pick up more classes in the summer when they're on break. So we do try to make it as flexible as possible. I think the faculty in the program are really good. So I, in addition to my teaching role, have also been a sports psychology consultant myself for about 20 years. I live in the town where Penn State University is. I work with a number of their teams. I have my own private practice, working with high school athletes on top of the college athletes. I have a D1 athlete in my, well, she's not living in my house. She's a D1 athlete at the university. And so I've seen it firsthand in addition to all my professional experience. But I would say that's a really good question. And I would look at what's available to you, what the faculty are doing, how much applied work there is if you do want to work in an applied capacity, or is it more research focused? Yeah, so I don't know that, I don't know I could say like, yes, you have to do ours. I think there are a lot of good programs out there, and just to see which is a really good fit for you.
Yeah, and Dr. Lally, I've heard you talk about this in the virtual information session. And for anyone who's looking for kind of a broader scope of the program, there's a great on-demand virtual session that covers, kind of the finer points of the whole Masters of Science in Sport and Performance Psychology program available on the website. But the program history, like you've been doing this for a really long time. This is a program that's been around and is very well recognized and held in very high regard by people that work in the field. And Dr. Lally, if I'm not mistaken, I think you created the program some years ago.
Yeah, so when I first came to Lock Haven, I started a minor in sport, and well, now we call it sport and performance psychology, and then a few years later started the grad program. So I think the grad program was approved in 2012. And yeah, I mean, it's a like I love working in this capacity. So I have an undergrad degree in psychology. So I don't know if anyone's detected an accent. I'm actually Canadian. So I have an undergrad degree in psychology, but I completed my psych undergrad, and I had done a 1-year placement during my final year of studies. So a combined class and field placement experience that last year. And at the end of that, I was like, I don't want to do this. And I was stuck. I was like, what am I going to do? I just finished a 4-year undergrad degree, and I found sports psychology. And I played a lot of sports, so I grew up in a hockey family. And so I was able to put two things together that I really love. And so then I actually switched gears a little bit. And instead of going, I thought I would do a PhD in clinical psych. I then did a master's degree in human kinetics with a focus on sports psych. And then I did a PhD in exercise science with a focus on sports psych. So it was a really great way for me to combine two interests. I'm still active. I run marathons, and so it's both a professional and personal joy to be working in this area.
And actually, I'm looking at the chat here. We have a really nice
Yeah.
testimonial from a graduate.
Oh,
The program is manageable if you're working full time. Access to Dr. Lally and other professors is available and are invested in your success. This is from a 2015 grad who was back taking courses to meet the CMPC requirement. So always hearing from former students, I think, is probably as powerful of.
I'm just waving to Anne. So I actually have the chat up, so I can't read them as quickly as I'm talking as well, but I see Anne's name. Hi, Anne. Actually, Anne and I saw each other at a volleyball game, and I have to apologize because it was my daughter plays for Penn State, and they beat Nebraska at the end of the regular season, and Anne was there in the stands, and we said, okay, we're going to talk afterwards, but it was such chaos after they won. So hi, Anne, and I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to you after the game.
Yeah, and that's great. And Anne, thank you for sharing your experience. That's very helpful. There's one more final question here. How does one search for a mentor in their area? Would it be found on the AASP website?
Yeah, so there is, so they have a directory. So if you just go, and I could, if I go back to, well, I won't go back. I'm just going to direct you there. But yeah, if you go on their website, on the right-hand side navigation, there is a tab just for certification. Oh yeah, I know that's Anne responding. There's a right-hand tab for certification, and underneath that, there's all sorts of resources. And one of them I think will be like find a mentor. And then when you get to that page, you can search by geographic location, you can search by sport. So if you specifically want to work in sport, they'll also list other areas. So I know we have some students who are interested in working in the military, so they'll list whether or not they have experience doing that. A lot of students, they want to find someone that's geographically close to them. And just to give you a perspective, sometimes they think that they will be able to observe that person in practice. They may be able to do that if they're doing teamwork, group level work. Sometimes they're not, though. So if they're doing one-on-one level work, because of confidentiality, they're not necessarily going to be able to observe them. So I think it is really good if you can find someone close to you, although I don't think that that's necessarily a criteria. And I guess I'm gonna point to Anne in that. You know, we've been doing some mentoring, and we do it electronically, and it works out well. Oh, do I think AASP is done changing the form? I hope so. So those of you who are following it, they had a form. They've made some changes. One of the big changes that they made is they used to distinguish between electronic hours and face-to-face hours, and they've removed that. They've also gone to a fully online application. I can't see the online because I'm already certified. I don't have to do it, so I can't see it. I do assume that it's easier. I know from the mentor side, it's a little bit easier. I don't expect that they're going to change it. One, because they just made the change, and to be fair to them, that form hadn't changed in, I can't think that it ever changed really from the initial form. So to have a change, even though it did just happen to those who are going through that process now, I don't think we're going to have another. And the reason I also don't think we're going to have another is that we're going to be really focused on accreditation. So I don't think they're going to go back and look at any existing forms until they start getting through that accreditation process. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe we got through all the questions.
Oh, good. Okay.
And everyone, thank you for the questions. They were tremendous. I would imagine you are not the only people who are wondering those same things. So I'm sure anyone who watches the recording will benefit from hearing the answers to those. Dr. Lally, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this. And we look forward to hearing from everybody in the future. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact Dr. Lally or myself. We are always happy to help.
Thanks. Good luck, everyone. And I'll see some of you in class.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.